Joining us now for a one-on-one conversation here from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, the one and only Ryan Serhant. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. So, housing is such an important topic, especially as we consider the state of inflation, the state of consumers' accessibility to housing. It's something we cover in the lens of markets and the economy very closely.
Yep.
Give me your current diagnosis. How do you see the U.S. housing market today from your experience?
Well, we have an inventory crunch, that's for sure. Historical average, we have about 1 million homes plus, around 1.2 million homes on the market at any given time in the United States. Today, we're just under 500,000. So there's a clear crunch on inventory that's putting a lot of pressure and upward momentum on pricing. So that's what's kind of brought this standstill in the marketplace that people are thinking about and asking if the market's going to crash, it's going to crash, it's going to crash, which I don't think it's going to. Right? If we look at history, every market crash, you look at one thing, which is seller distress. And we don't have seller distress, right? If you look at just over 40% of all homes in the United States don't even have mortgages on them. 65% of the mortgages are under 4%. So you have homeowners that could be in distress, but they're sitting there looking at a financial asset, so now they're just not moving. So the housing crisis is that you have people that should be moving. You have baby boomers who should be finding new places to go. You have people wanting to upgrade, they've had a baby. All of those people are saying, I'm not gonna move, I'm just gonna hold tight to see what happens. But I think the Fed is probably done raising rates. I think that's gonna be an uptick for the market. And I think 2024 is gonna be much faster than most people are talking about.
So that's interesting. So you have to follow monetary policy out of the central bank very closely for what you do, right? So I'm sure, you're just like all of us down here at the floor of the stock exchange. You're closely following what Mr. Powell and his colleagues have to say, because obviously that's upward pressure on mortgage rates.
Yeah, I am a real estate broker and I run a real estate brokerage, and we're in multiple markets, so I have to be very in tune what's happening in macro markets so that we can talk to our buyers and talk to our sellers intelligently so that we can actively create markets. Most real estate agents do a handful of transactions a year, if that, because they're waiting for the market to come to them, which is why the COVID market has been so active for so many in the real estate business. But to have sustainability and to be confident and really build a successful career, you have to create markets. And so in this market, you're looking for sellers, right? In the last couple of years, you were looking for buyers. And we'll see what happens going forward. But it's a moving market right now.
What would you say to people, especially in a market like New York City, that are trying to rent? Let's focus on the rent side of things specifically. They are feeling the pressures out there. We all know the desirable neighborhoods, people forced to make compromises, especially in this era of, I don't want to quite call it post-COVID, because it's still something we're sort of living with, but we are feeling these pressures post-2020. What would you say to potential renters today?
Yeah, I definitely think we're post-COVID. Okay. I think the volatility we're experiencing this year is a COVID sell-off and kind of that come down from the hysteria that we had from 2020 through 2022, and obviously an interest rate shock that we just haven't experienced since 2007. I think affordability is at a 37-year low. And so I think people are looking and they're saying, okay, I would love to own a home, but they're having a hard time getting pre-approved. The last housing crisis put a real strict structure in place for being able to get a home loan, which is a good thing. It's a good thing, right? It's harder now to get a loan for a house at any price than it ever was pre-2008. And so those people are saying, okay, in order to buy an average home, right? Not New York City, but let's say the average home in the United States right now is like $436,000. You have to make over six figures to be able to afford that home. Okay, which is fine. I think UPS just came out with some prints saying in the next 5 years, UPS drivers are going to make all in with base plus benefits like $170,000 to $175,000 a year. Okay, so income is now starting to finally catch up with where inflation has pushed housing, but being pre-approved and actually closing a loan for a home to purchase is tough given the constraints on income. And so people are forced to then go and find a rental. Rents in New York City are high, but there's been downward pressure on rents because people just have opted not to move over the past year to 2 years, because you have to factor in all the move costs and all the ancillary expenses that go into that moving process. But something we work with on all our clients is thinking about not just the short-term pain, but what is that long-term gain? Just reminding them again, sometimes it's okay to turn the TV off. Sorry, But turn the TV off and actually just pay attention to what are you moving for,
Right.
What are you trying to get to? What is that end goal? If you look at your life in 2 years from now, if you move today, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, yes, but if you're cutting your commute time by an hour or 2 hours a day, if you do actually get that second or third bedroom, what will you be able to do with that time you buy back by potentially, yes, paying a little bit more money today for your house than you would have a year ago? Does that maybe translate to more income for you in a year because you'll be able to make more money or be able to do that side hustle or what have you? And I think you'll start to see that start to tick up and people will actually start moving more come Q4 and definitely through 2024.
Turn the TV off, but only after we are completed with this interview with Ryan, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I stress that. What part of the overall housing story do you think we are missing or not talking enough about?
I think people talk too much about institutional home ownership.
Okay.
I see those headlines all the time. Where like, 20% of the national housing stock is owned by these institutions and they bought and they're the ones taking our
BlackRocks
homes.
and
they're taking our homes and they're taking our homes. And it is just not factually correct. And also, those institutions who do own homes, right, are providing home stock for people who need homes. And they're also by far the most negotiable. So one of the exciting things about this current market is, yes, are rates higher than they were a year ago? Absolutely. But is negotiability there in most markets? Not all, but in most? Absolutely. So you marry the house, but you date the rate, right? And when rates come down and you refinance, because they will, they're not going to come down tomorrow, but as we go into 2024 and 2025, right, they will, and you'll still be able to get a great home. And again, focus on that end game. I think something no one's talking about enough is something we focus on a lot on our side of the business in terms of generating business and creating that market, which is what I call the ARM Renaissance. So the adjustable rate mortgage Renaissance. So you have a significant amount of people who, especially in urban markets like New York City, have 5, 7, or 10-year ARMs that are sub 3%, and definitely sub 3.5%, that are now coming due in the next 18 to 24 months. And so everyone's a procrastinator until it's too late. Like we just did a marketing piece yesterday to 9,417 addresses in Manhattan alone that have ARMs that are resetting in the next 2 years, where those loans are over $1 million, where the monthly payment is going to increase by at least double, where people are just going to sit and wait until it's at the end. So what does that do to the marketplace, right? Is that going to finally bring in home stock, but at what pricing? If you're selling and you're slightly more distressed in 2024 because you need to get out from what could potentially be a monthly income crushing payment, is that going to bring a lot more stock to the market in 2024? I think so, but there hasn't been enough focus on that.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. I don't know how closely your day-to-day work follows commercial real estate specifically, but I mean, in terms of the, when you talk overall pressure, and we just saw the Moody's downgrade on regional banks, and one of the many reasons for those 10 and an additional 17 or so, is because of how deeply entrenched they are in commercial real estate. People walk around Lower Manhattan here and they say, hey, there's a lot more families, a lot more baby carriages being pushed around, a lot more people walking pets than maybe there were this time 10 years ago, because you do have a lot of these properties that now have been converted. Are you as concerned about the state of commercial real estate and potential headwinds for the next year or so, as a lot of analysts are?
I think most commercial real estate is owned by mostly smart individuals who always seem to find a way. But I think what no one talks about enough is that there's a big difference between leased space and actually used space. So all I hear over and over is, walk around the city, that office building, it's all dark, the commercial real estate's dead, the office market is dead. And that's because maybe people aren't coming to the office still to this day, or maybe that person that took 100,000 feet in that building has downgraded, but they're still paying rent, right? If you look at most urban markets, the leased, so the rents that are being paid on the spaces is still over 90% in most of these commercial office sectors, but actually being used is hovering around like 50%. So just because you don't see the lights on, and just because the headlines seem negative, doesn't mean that people aren't paying rent. And it's created an amazing market for the sublet space. Like our firm is expanding probably way too fast. And so, we have our headquarters is an entire building that I have in the middle of Soho. and now I need more space. So I just took 10,000 square feet at a great deal in Tribeca with amazing views on Hudson. That is a sublet from a space that had been dark for 3 years, but that tenant was paying their rent in full every month, and we were able to come in, and I'm pretty sure I got it for half, which is great.
Great, congratulations, first of all. Second of all,
there's opportunity.
I knew you'd have a good take on the CRE thing, so I appreciate that context. For anyone who's watching who may want to learn more about investing in real estate, even if that person's just getting going, what advice would you have for someone who might be on the outside of this conversation but wants to learn more?
Well, one, I would always say, take it slow and do your research, right? Work with a seasoned professional and treat them as your partner. Maybe they come in on a deal with you, but if they don't, they're financially incentivized for you to win, both on the buy and on the potential sell or lease out of the space, if that's what you're doing. And really treat them as your investment advisor or your partner, and really know what you're getting yourself into. I would move to the opposite direction of any trend, right? And just be really, 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 really smart. Do it once, make sure it works, and then continue to go from there. If you look now, I think the biggest concern for any real estate investor today is probably regulatory changes and different hurdles. There's a lot of talk about Airbnb and the crackdowns, which is all about money at the end of the day. New York City's issue with Airbnb isn't because we don't want people renting other people's homes. It's because New York City wants their hotel tax. It has nothing to do with safety, clearly. Right? If New York cared as much about safety as I think we all do, New York would probably feel a bit different right now, but they care about money, right? And they care about that tax. And so if you're an investor and you're banking on those Airbnb rates, right, and that ROI, and then Florida enacts some sort of regulatory change that says, no more short-term leases in the entire state, which is not on the board, but could be, you never know, that immediately changes your investment, and it will for everybody else that bought for short-term housing reasons. So there's things like that you just have to think through.
Ryan, what was the most difficult sale you've ever made?
Every day of my life is a difficult sale.
The newest, most difficult sale?
Yes, you're only as good as your last deal. The most difficult sale, I had one of my first deals that was large. It was $8 million. And a big way that I built my career is by being able to sell homes to anyone, anywhere, on any device. It's why a lot of people hire us, because you have local real estate agents who have a local understanding in a residential neighborhood, and that's fine. But they really don't have tentacles in other markets. Right? We're a global firm, and so we can put our sellers' homes in front of more eyeballs than anybody else. Even when I did my first deal, and we found the buyer in another country, I won't name what country it was, and he gave me a runaround for almost a year. Never sent the deposit. It was litigation. It was crazy. And then one day, an $830,000 deposit shows up from a state-controlled bank, and everyone was excited. But then in New York City, you have to do these condo board applications, which he refused to do, and then disappeared again. And so I got on an airplane, and I went and I found him, and I'd never met him before. And he was a really intense guy, and I got him to do somewhat of the application. And then I came back, and he disappeared again. And then one day, randomly, he shows up after we thought the deal was totally dead with a fleet of armored Escalades,
of course,
getting off of his private 737, and said, "I'm ready to close now." And then he just wanted to take a selfie, and that was probably where I got gray hair. That deal. New York is a wild place to do business.
What is your favorite? Do you have a current favorite property in New York? For instance, I remember last year you were doing a lot of work at 77 Greenwich,
yes,
which is the newer one. I've seen a lot of your great TikTok content and other places. Right now, do you have one that really excites you in particular, that either maybe just opened or is on the horizon, that you particularly gets you really jazzed?
There are so many. I am still obsessed with our penthouse at Central Park Tower that is listed for $250 million.
Wow.
I have a showing of that pretty quickly here, so I'll have to leave in a second.
Fair enough.
But that one's unlike anything I've ever seen. But at the same time, we also just put on a brand new luxury rental building on the Upper West Side. It's called The Laney. We just started doing leases about 10 days ago, and it's an amazing building for that person who might not want to purchase right now, but wants to rent and wants to be in an amazing location just steps from Central Park.
Amazing. Final question for you, because I know I got to get going. Best piece of advice you ever got? And that could be either for your career on the media side or your career more specifically on the real estate side.
Real estate is a roller coaster. There's no salary, there's no benefits. You have to be somewhat crazy to get into any business that is purely focused on commission, but it is a complete meritocracy. The harder you work, the luckier you're going to get. But it's easy to get out of the business when you lose a deal or you don't make money for 6 months. And so the best advice I ever got to handle a career that is like this is take care of the work, and the work will take care of you. Don't focus on the money, don't focus on the deals, don't focus on the noise. The markets are going to go up, the markets are going to go down, and then they go back up again, and then they go back up. So just take care of the work. If you do the work every day in and day out, that work will by default take care of you. And it has proven true for the last 15 years.
Ryan Serhant, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Great to have you. Good luck.
For sure.